It's too soon to say, and the reason I say that is because when we look at the announcements made by the various gambling businesses last week, they've all said that there are a range of possibilities now, and it depends to what extent they pull different levers available to them. So, to what extent are they able to reduce marketing without impacting jobs? To what extent can they change the design of the games or the bonuses and promotions without impacting jobs? I believe that these businesses will try the best they can not to lose staff, but some of them will have to, unfortunately, because payroll is a big cost component for them. When you look at the announcements last week, we have seen some operators saying they think they can mitigate around 25% of the cost increase. Others saying it's higher, others saying it's lower. So we don't know yet. What we can say is that there are people in finance and tax teams within these businesses working furiously now to try to work out what the response is going to be. And I imagine we'll start to see that play out fairly soon. The big tax increase isn't coming until April, but I think you're going to see businesses having to react sooner than that. So unfortunately, in the first calendar quarter of 2026, I think we'll begin to see those job losses coming through.
I'd like to think long term about what this means for the sector in Gibraltar. I mean, it's obviously been a major sector here, driving the economy forward, 30% of GDP. But do you think this is the beginning of the end? Is the sector now going to shrink? Will it start to lose that dominance in the future?
I think in the short term, we're likely to see some shrinkage. As I say, things like job losses, reduction in expenditure by these businesses. But that's short term. I think medium term, longer term, I expect that businesses will adapt and they'll adapt in such a way that the sector will carry on, but in a different shape. The most obvious way they are probably going to adapt is by looking at options to serve customers outside the UK. The reality is, with these tax increases that have been announced last week, the UK online betting and gaming market now becomes quite uncompetitive. It becomes quite unattractive from a business and investment perspective because we're talking now about the UK having amongst the highest tax rates for online betting and gaming in the world. Um, but I think the what you can see happening probably in Gibraltar is businesses there, of course, have the ability to serve markets outside the UK. And that's something they're going to have to do because we know that the Gibraltar betting and gaming sector has always been very, very closely aligned with the UK, and the UK has accounted for a huge proportion of the activity in Gibraltar. Those businesses will now have to pivot into new markets. I don't think they'll exit the UK, but I think they are always making rational decisions about where they're going to have the best return on investment, which markets are the most attractive for them to grow in and make a profit in. And unfortunately, the UK has now moved down the list.
Do you think it's a question of changing strategy to survive? It's not a question of, this is the beginning of the end of the sector. You think the sector can survive this?
Yes, I think adapt to survive. I think the willingness is there from the government and from the people in Gibraltar, both locals and expats. Everyone wants to get through this period, but it will be tough. And there are going to be changes at the end of this. I think Gibraltar will remain a centre of excellence for online betting and gaming. I think this is a sector that has built up very effectively over many decades. There is a strong, well-respected regulatory framework. There's loads of talent. There's a whole ecosystem in Gibraltar of people, businesses, suppliers who are some of the best in the world at what they do in betting and gaming. But everyone's going to have to adapt to what's happened last week. And so the most important thing is that those changes happen and that there is that effective working between Gibraltar's government and regulator and businesses. But the great thing about a place like Gibraltar is that there has always been a really good, close, effective working relationship between government, the regulator, and businesses. And so I think that means Gibraltar is actually very well placed to come out of the other side of this. And some of the jurisdictions you probably don't have such a great working relationship. I think that is very much going to help. And that's why I think we will see the sector survive, but in a different shape.